Who was the worst house guest you ever had over? I was in kindergarten and my brothers invited a friend over to play the newest Madden game. After they got done playing, the friend decided to go home, so my mom drove him. While he left, my brothers told my dad that our Madden game was missing. We spent a good time looking for it but couldn't find it. My dad believed my brother's friend took it, so he went over to his house and what do you know? He stole it. He was banned from the house and the friendship ended. I never liked him tbh since I was too young to care about friendship. My daughter had a friend like that, only it was her own mother who caught her stealing from us and made her write an apology letter. I accepted it, but never had her over again, and shed no tears when she moved away soon after that. The house guests that rearranged our furniture and artwork while we were away to surprise us with their good taste. Not my house but my car. I don't have many rules for passengers when I'm driving, but there are two I will never budge on. 1. Wear your seatbelt. 2. Do not smoke in my car. I had just bought a car. It wasn't brand new, but I knew the previous and only owner, and I knew he was a car guy who took meticulous care of his cars inside and out. He wouldn't even sell me the car before he had given the engine a proper service. Within a week of getting the car, a friend asked for a lift to the train station. I knew he smoked, so as we walked to the car I told him specifically to wait until we get to the station before he lights up. A 10-minute ride at most. I back out of the parking spot, drive to the exit of the parking lot, and as I check my left hand side for oncoming cars I hear from my right the distinctive sound of a lighter sparking up. Dude could not even freaking wait until we were out of the freaking car park before he just had to have his goddamn cigarette. I ask him what the heck he thinks he's doing and he just looks at me and says, relax. It's not like it's a new car. Sucker ended up walking to the train station. Sucker ended up walking to the train station. Satisfying. I don't let people eat or smoke in my car. It's not the greatest, but it's mine. I would have done the same thing. A friend stayed over after a night of partying, as we were in no state to drive. During the night, my flat got flooded. He watched me clean up the water for a couple of hours, with his feet up on the sofa, smoking my cigarettes. Then he has the audacity to tell me, bro, drop me home. I'm getting bored. Mother, walk home. Freaking heck. Bro, I feel so bad for you. I'd be on my hands and knees trying to help. Probably make it worse, but I'd at least try. My mother-in-law, particularly because she showed up uninvited and let herself in with a copy of our keys she'd got made when my soul left them there, then proceeded to blame us for her copying her key because family should be allowed to walk in and out as they please. My parents were kinda broke when I was young, and because of that, one summer for around a month all I had to wear on my feet were these tatty old boots with holes in the soles, and when they got wet they made my feet super smelly. Well, it was a particularly hot summer and I was around 13. After being out doing normal kid stuff, my friend invited me to stay at his for the night. Come the end of the night I take the boots off in the room I'm staying in and go to bed. As I'm drifting off, the dad peeks in as he is going to bed and says, "You are one smelly little boy." I was their worst house guest. Haha, my son has friends like this, and I am pretty sure my son's feet smell too. It's normal. My mother's sister. My parents and her went on a night out, came back, most of us were asleep. Mum went to bed. She ended up having sex with my dad. Long story short, she's not a good house guest. Yeah, and sorry to say it, but your dad kinda sucks too. My in-laws. They're both inconsiderate slobs. Phil has to monopolize the TV 24/7, while Mill won't lift a finger to clean up after herself. Also, once she was making herself a sandwich, licked the mayonnaise off of her knife, which he then proceeded to stick in the mustard jar. Add to that she'll never offer to pay, meaning, she'll never just say, "I've got this. Put your money away." She'll instead ask with this weak tone in her voice, "Do you want me to pay for that?" because she knows if she asks that way my wife will say no. It annoys the crap out of both of us. I always answer questions like that with, "If you would like to, I would appreciate it." Some years ago a girlfriend of mine visited me in the city I lived at that time. We slept at my boyfriend's place where he lives with a roommate. She was rude the whole time. making stupid jokes about the guys and said they couldn't cook just because they used powdered chicken brew as an ingredient. I escorted her to the rail station the next morning, but she forgot her phone charger and we hadn't enough time to get it before the train arrived. So my boyfriend rushed with his bicycle to bring it to us. She never said once thanks. Not for the food they cooked her, not for the provided bed, and not for her stupid charger. After 1 year passed, I decided to invite her again, because my boyfriend and me moved together in a beautiful and amazing apartment. She came with her new lover from which we never heard anything before, and her untrained dog. I didn't say anything as it climbed on our couch trained in rain from outside. But what made me furious was her not batting an eye as her dog started to dig with its claws into our couch. Not only doesn't she respect other people or their effort for her and their belongings, but she is fully incapable of raising and training an animal or caring for it. Her visits were the drop in the bucket to end this friendship. I couldn't take her personality any longer. Sorry, my English isn't good and I can't describe how awful she was. When I read my post it seems pretty innocent, but I'm just lost for words and it makes me still mad thinking about it. She honestly sounds terrible and your English is very good. My wife's 4 friends had stayed over after a party because they lived pretty far away. I was in the kitchen making coffee in the morning and the friend's wife came up the basement stairs into the kitchen wearing nothing but her underwear. She didn't say anything to me, she just shuffled past and went back into the spare bedroom. I was curious what she was doing down there, so I went and I checked. It turns out in her drunken state she couldn't find either one of the bathrooms upstairs on the main level, so she went into the basement and crapped beneath the stairs all over the floor. When her husband came out of the bedroom I told him that he had a mess to clean up and directed him to the basement so he could find his wife's surprise. That's when he decided to use our clean bath towels to smear her crap all over my basement floor. Then he just tossed the towels into the laundry tub. I never spoke to either one of them again. One good thing did come out of it though. We now get to say crap the basement drunk as the top of the drunkenness meter. Banned. What the frick? That's absolutely horrible. I had a family member come stay with us for a few weeks. We had the spare bedroom upstairs set up and ready for them with a bed and TV. Said family member decided the spare bedroom wasn't good enough and decided to turn the entire lower floor where our entertainment room is into their own apartment instead. They didn't use the bed a single time. That was pretty infuriating. When I was a teenager I always insisted it was fine, I could just sleep on the couch. Someone else could have the bed so no one had to share. Now as an adult who is couch guests it occurs to me how much of an inconvenience someone crashing in your living room is. My aunt and her brother, let's call him Ab, came over to visit my family. He was notoriously cheap. Like he brought a rice cooker to a public bathroom to use the water and electricity to cook rice cheap. Although he was a millionaire, he also been trying to set his daughters up with my brother, which is why he came over. We decided to buy 3 family-sized Popeyes set and 3 gallons of OJ. Don't ask. Very Asian. For 8 people lunch. Thinking we'll have at least 1 set left over for my aunt to bring home for my uncle because Popeyes was very new to our state at the time. Between my family of 4, we maybe ate half a box of chicken, half of the sides that came with it, and half 1/4 gallon of juice. Ab proceeded to eat 2 full boxes of family-sized Popeyes, ate all the sides that came with it, and drank 2 gallons of juice. His wife had to stop him because he was eating so fast that she thought he was going to choke, and Ab was giving dirty looks to people who went back for a second piece of chicken. After all that was consumed, he went to our bathroom and completely destroyed our toilet. Poop everywhere. On the toilet seat, under the toilet seat, rim of the toilet, on the ground around the toilet, and on our bathroom vanity side, next to the toilet. He also clogged the toilet and tried to unclog it, I guess. The plunger was covered in feces and toilet paper on the ground. He walked downstairs like nothing happens and didn't say anything. He then proceeded to eat half a platter of fruit I just had served. I guess it was probably 3 oranges, 2 apples, and a quarter of watermelon. I was very taken back when I went to the bathroom and had to discreetly grab my mom to show her. I end up having to clean it up because my mom didn't want to make a scene of it. Still a bit traumatized. He wouldn't leave until we ordered a huge dinner for at least 12 people and proceed to take all the food once it was brought home. He was never invited back to our house. My husband's mother. We haven't spoken to her in a few years. She was banished from every Catholic church within 100 miles of her home in SE, Michigan. She ended up going to a Korean church where nobody spoke English, so nobody dealt with her. She finally moved to Cincy and has been there since. She visited after I had my first daughter. She wouldn't freaking leave. She stayed for 2 weeks. She thought she was helping by going to Dollar Tree and finding organizers and completely rearranging my kitchen. I still randomly find things where they do not belong from her makeover. I also will toss my now deceased uncle in the ring as well. He took a Amtrak from Cali to Michigan after his brother, my other uncle, died. Dead of winter, and it ended up taking 5 days for them to arrive. He was about 6'4" and no less than 650 pounds. He brought his equally large and smelly son with him. I figured they would be in town for about a week. No biggie. Nope. They stayed at my house for 10 days, until my husband told them to shower or get the heck out. I had to throw away my recliner he had been sitting on. He broke the tie rod to my husband's car and the CV to my minivan. We told him to go rent a U-Haul pickup to drive because I couldn't handle it anymore. He ended up staying nearly a month in town, but after 10 days, my husband's grandfather died and we had to go to Ohio for the funeral, so they had to leave. They stayed at my sister's house and apparently they showered regularly and she had no complaints. But her house also always smells of wet dog and poop. So gross and gross. My now ex-husband and I rented a room to one of his co-workers. His co-worker never washed his hands, so there would be dirty handprints on every railing or door handle from the front door up to his room. He never showered. He would have a bath roughly once a week. This left my white tub a grey color with a black ring all around the top. He never flushed, so this left my white toilet a nasty brown color. The first time I saw the bathroom after he had been there for a week or so, I cried. He smelled awful. He played hockey a couple times a week but still would just have a bath about once a week. So it was very hard to be around him if he wanted to spend time out of his room. He never cooked, just ate chips or fast food in his room and left the garbage in there until my husband would tell him it was time to clean it out before we got bugs. It was awful. My parents. So many rigid rules about everything in their house with the added "you will obey the rules of my house or leave" attitude. They come to my house and, especially my dad, treats it however he wants. Muddy shoes? He's okay walking on your carpets. Tired? He's not, so you aren't going to bed. Nor is he leaving. Hungry? They'll demand you cater to their wants, even when they aren't invited to eat. It was at that point I realized it wasn't the house rules he wanted followed, but himself. You need to take a page out of his book. You will obey the rules of my house or leave. I don't give a frick who you are. No one disrespects me in my own home. Absolutely without a doubt one of my younger brother's friends from high school. Before he moved in with us, he seemed like a fine enough kid from a less than ideal home situation. His mom jumped from boyfriend to boyfriend and decided to move across the country midway through his junior year of high school. If he went with her, he would have ended up delaying his graduation by 6 months a year. So my parents offered to let him stay with us. To frame the rest of the story, and to explain how much I dislike this kid, the TLDR is that he's the reason my dog is dead. This kid was the worst type of house guest, incredibly possessive of his space, which he would basically bar whenever he was gone, even though his room was the only way for us to get to the hot water heater and boiler. He behaved like a neat freak, but was secretly a huge slob. He hid half-finished beers underneath the bathroom sink for a year, and the types of bugs that gathered pretty much ruined the lower floor of the house. He would sit on his bed and smoke so much weed, and then completely pretend that it didn't happen. Even when we found a lit bowl sitting next to him, he would ask my parents for money constantly. His mother decided he needed nothing at all since he wasn't her problem anymore, and then spent it on drugs or on building a $1,000 gaming PC. Here's the awful John Wick, old yellow bit of it all. He constantly ate chicken wings and would leave the bones just on the floor next to his bed, persistently, for months, even after my mother asked him not to. One morning, he dropped his 10-piece wing bones scattered around his bed like a crappy Santeria ritual, and my dog found them. He was downstairs getting ready from school, saw my dog choking, and just walked out to the bus. Didn't tell anyone. My mom found my dog's body about 30 minutes later. He never apologized, never even acted like it was his fault. He just stopped talking to everyone in the family and ignored us to our faces. He moved out in the middle of the night, stealing the mattress he was sleeping on to go to his aunt's house. 2 years later, we found him pee drunk sleeping on our porch, covered in his own vomit. When I told him he had to go right now before someone found him and called the cops, he shouted HUB at me, threw up all over the floor and my shoes, took his vomit white jeans off on the deck, and wandered away. His name is basically a swear word in our house. It has been years, and honestly I cannot find it in myself to forgive him. He killed my buster, and he didn't even have the decency to own up to it. Good God, my dad, mom, myself would have literally tried to kill him if he did that to one of our dogs. That's terrible. We allowed a friend of ours to stay the night once because he was down on his luck. He proceeds to invite his girlfriend over to stay the night without asking us, and they were laughing and being loud late into the night while I was trying to sleep. I had work early the next morning. Needless to say, he never came over again. They totally had sex on your couch. A friend of my husband's. He was a house guest that never wanted to leave. He has a wife and a kid but still insisted on coming over to our house every day for hours at a time without them. He was borderline stalkerish, called my husband at least 10 times a day when he wasn't over, which wasn't often. It's like he wanted to be married to my husband and not his wife. He was the most annoying house guest ever who never wanted to leave us alone. Guy probably hated being at home and didn't have any other friends. Kinda sad actually. Had a roommate in college who decided to let his brother come and stay with us for close to a month. These two buttholes did nothing but drink 40s and play Madden all day. The worst was when I came home to find a crock pot of chili I made for a work party completely devoured, with the note still on the lid asking for it to not be eating. When I called them on that bulls, they both tried to pick a fight with me. One night they go out, get crap faced, and the brother brings home the single trashiest woman I have ever seen in my life and then proceeds to have very loud and smelly sex on the couch in the living room. I moved out a month later. I'm sorry you had to deal with that bulls, but loud and smelly sex had me in tears of laughter. I used to have a regular dinner get together with a friend and her boyfriend on Sundays, alternating between her place and mine. When we went to her place, she'd be super anal about keeping the place clean, making us clean up before we left, which was fine. Whatever. They'd come over to my place, and the two of them would be slobs. I guess because we weren't as tidy as she was, so why bother? The worst offense being when she dropped a french fry and started grinding it into the carpet with her foot. I told her to stop and she just said whatever, the place is a mess anyways. Added bonus that eventually she stopped having me over because she didn't want to have to deal with cleaning. My aunt was going to stay with us for a couple months and find a job in our area. She's been living here since early 2017 and only started looking for jobs in March of this year. And TBH, I'm not fully sure she's actually applying to them because she hasn't had a single interview. She had a mental breakdown this past winter and thought her phone was being tapped and we were all secretly recording her around the house. If she saw you holding your phone or near a phone, she'd rush out of the room. She came into my room uninvited once to check for recording devices in my smoke detector. At one point she wasn't speaking to anyone and would write messages in a little notebook and burn them once they had been read. Sometimes she would start screaming for no reason. Sometimes it was hysterical crying and sometimes she'd just stand and stare. One time I found her standing outside my bedroom door at 1 AM. She would also stay up until 3 or 4 AM and just stare at the muted TV in the living room with all the lights on. It got to the point where I legitimately did not feel safe in my own house, but it's not like we could tell her to leave and put her on the street. She refused help for a long time, but she's fine now and sees a psych regularly. But I've realized that even without the mental illness I still hate being around her. She's a know-it-all. She's constantly interrupting. She's ever present to the point that I can't have financial discussions with my mom in person and I have to text her about it instead. She literally follows me around the house and will stand in the kitchen watching me as I make myself lunch. I can't stand it. And being someone who doesn't have a job, she literally never leaves the house. Even when I think I'm alone, she's here, just being very quiet. She's probably going to live here until I'm dead because my parents don't have the backbone to ask her to leave. This is the third time a house guest has significantly overstayed their welcome. TL. DR. My aunt overstayed her welcome by a year, and counting, and had a paranoid breakdown over the winter that led to us feeling unsafe in our own home. Wow, this sounds awful for you. Hope it gets better soon. My brother-in-law. He's the most socially awkward person I know, and as a result he's almost unbearable to host because he's obsessed with food. He wakes up thinking about what to have for breakfast, while also planning what he'll have for his other meals. While eating he'll also tell you about how the food could be made better, which doesn't really stop him from eating everything he sees. Seriously, he thinks leftovers are a sin, I think. He's not quiet about bodily noises, mouth breathing while chewing, belching, snorting, blowing nose, etc. It's gross. He's pretty short with my kids, 5-year-old twins. He'll go from happy-go-lucky uncle to yelling at them in about half a second. When he goes to the bathroom he's in there for about 40 minutes, not exaggerating. While in there, he'll also be watching YouTube on his phone without headphones, volume blasting. He falls asleep with all of the lights on, and his phone still playing YouTube. He listens to music TV on his phone without headphones, regardless of what anyone else is doing. He makes regular commentary on what you're watching talking about, and if you're watching a movie he'll constantly quote it and guffaw when he's right. My husband's ex-co-worker friend. He gave us a sob story about how he had nowhere to live, no car, money, etc. So we gave him our upstairs rent-free, a job, gave him access to our car and gave him groceries. He'd been a roommate before and was amazing, but he found his new GF and raving with 18-year-olds. At 26, he quit the job after we were close to firing him. Thank God, because they'd be working out of town and he'd share a room with someone and blast music and turn on all the lights until 3 AM. We found out he stole his dad's credit card to go see an out-of-town rave for him and his GF. Didn't have a way there or back, just expected us to give him our car for the weekend. So after about a month of not doing anything to better his situation, we noticed this girl around more and more. Turns out he moved his GF in without telling us and just expected us to just include her in our generosity. We weren't impressed, and it got worse when I found empty pills in a drawer when I was looking for some documents that were in a drawer next to his bed. Didn't think this was a permanent situation at first. Then she very deliberately flashed her butt when she thought I couldn't see to my now husband while we were cuddling on the couch together. He nearly kicked them both out that night after that bulls. I had to calm him down. We never told him about the incident, no freaking idea why, but my husband wouldn't let me, and we gave them a deadline to move out after that. I think the reasoning your husband followed, regarding not telling his friend about his girlfriend flashing him her butt, is that his friend would probably be depressed and more of a frick up if he broke up with her, and probably would try to use that to remain living with you. I had family come over that couldn't control their freaking kids. Were trying to see who could beat the record of jumping from the highest point in the stairs to my bottom floor. A distant in-law asked to stay with us along with his pregnant wife. They were having issues with people from the past and wanted to get away. When they got here we realized they didn't intend on going back. We discussed they'd stay a month and after that they needed to chip in. Dude sat on my couch for a month watching Netflix while his overdue preggo wife cleaned the house while I was at work. Eventually me and the wife found him a job and the baby was born. My so tells him, hey, a month is up. If you're going to stay we need half of rent and utilities. He got offended that we stuck to the agreed upon plan instead of letting him mooch. We thought he'd take his family back home but they stayed in town. When they moved out I found their placenta in a drawer. That really took a left turn at the last line. Okay, so I know I'm stupid for even being in this situation, but I met a guy online. We were really clicking for a couple months when he asked if he could come see me. He tells me he doesn't have a car so I'll need to pick him up at the bus station. That was fine with me so I pick him up, expecting him to leave that night as we had planned. Turns out he had other plans. It was a Friday and he hadn't purchased his ticket home until Tuesday and never told me how long he planned to stay. He was good looking but the entire time he was there he was on his phone. Took random pictures of my apartment and posted it on Facebook saying this was his vacation. I had a doctor appointment the next day that I wasn't planning on him being in the way of. Against my better judgment I left him there so I could go to my appointment. When I returned I could hear him talking about some kind of strange business before I even hit the front door. He had also smoked a bunch of cigarettes in my act after being asked to go outside to do that. I was pissed and that was the last straw. I told him we needed to talk and that I wasn't feeling him in any sort of way and that I wanted him out. He seemed shocked and kept insisting that he couldn't return home. There were no buses until Tuesday. It was Saturday at this point. He then said if I wanted to buy him a new ticket, he would go. I lied and told him I had bought a ticket and there was a bus leaving the station soon at his home 2 hours away. I got halfway to the bus station and he claims he left his freaking gold clip-in grill on my table in a paper towel and he was not leaving town without it. I turned around to get it for him because he was so untidy and I was cleaning up after him. I had actually thrown away the grill in the paper towel and fished it out of the trash. We got to THR bus station. He figured out I didn't buy our ticket and there were no buses going toward his home. I threatened to call the cops so he would get out of my car after an hour of arguing. Finally ditched that dude. Really didn't care what happened to him. Worst house guest ever. My roommate's boyfriend thought all the meat in my freezer was expired and threw it away. When I came home from work it was too late. It was a hot day and he did this right after I left for work, so the meat was not salvageable. $100 is $1 of perfectly good meat gone to waste. Needless to say I was pissed, and I made him buy me new meat. I am so glad someone in this thread got their stuff back. I let my best friend stay with me when he became homeless. Over the course of the year he was there, he knocked a huge hole in the wall in his room. He repaired said hole and did a crap job. Did a horrendous paint job on the wall he knocked a hole in. Got stains on all of the other walls because he worked at a factory and never washed his dang grubby hands. He also rarely showered. The stench from his room permeated the whole house. And he barely did anything to take care of the cat he brought with him, which I happily picked up the slack on. I love cats and that cat was a sweetheart. He also left the stove burners on after he was done cooking several times. He'd forget to turn off lights. He had to have his co-worker drive him to work for a reason I can't remember. He had a working vehicle, and most of the time he couldn't even wake up for work on time, so his co-worker would come knocking on the front door, waking me up earlier than I had to be up. Disclaimer: I don't mean to say this guy was a jerk. He was actually very kind and apologetic when he broke something or messed up, and he kept to himself most of the time. He was just really unlucky and forgetful. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.